So today we have with us Mr. Mark Martins with Ag Reg Placements, Mr. Dan Bremer with Ag Works, and Mr. Manuel Fick with USA Farm Labor. Gentlemen, thank you all for joining us for this brief question and answer session regarding the H2A program and its importance to production agriculture in the United States. Mark, I'm going to kick it off with you. You know, as more and more domestic citizens move away from the farm and we continue to see the upward trend of producers utilizing the H2A program, even with the record unemployment numbers during COVID-19, do you anticipate that trend would continue up? And you know, what can be done to help facilitate the needs for both producers and migrant workers under the H2A program?
Yeah, Jessica, and you're exactly right. And it's been pretty well documented that under the COVID pandemic, the referrals to ag job orders has decreased. So like you said, folks just are leaving the farm, and those that weren't raised on a farm aren't interested in working on a farm, generally speaking, although there are some exceptions. So, and I want to make note that if you survey a number of people about what changes need to be made to the H2A program, you're going to get a variety of answers and a lot of changes that people want. Some of them may be reasonable, some of them maybe not. And Department of Labor does have a proposed rulemaking right now that they're reviewing, which would implement some changes. And recently they've made the change of eliminating the print advertising requirement, which we want to commend them on that. That's been beneficial. They've shifted that to an online sort of database where they kind of handle the advertising and recruitment of U.S. workers. But I think the biggest complaint about the program itself is just its rigidity or just lack of flexibility in general. And I think that's a big barrier to entry and a frustration of those currently using it. So a couple of good examples would be right now, if you want to have 2 workers come over in February for servicing machinery, and then you need 2 more in April for planting, and then 2 more at fall harvest, or kind of whatever your peak needs are throughout your season, you currently have to file multiple sets of applications to try to encompass that need. Paperwork is burdensome. People in general don't like paperwork, but farmers definitely don't like paperwork, we know. So being able to file one application to kind of encompass that entire seasonal need would really be a benefit, I think. Right now, Department of Labor is particular and really restrictive on post-certification amendments to a job order. So basically, once they approve the job order, they won't allow you to change much in that job order. So if you're a farm labor contractor that needs to add growers or additional work sites, that's problematic. Or maybe you have acres that are in prevent plan and you're not going to have as big a crop as you thought, and you just need to reduce the number of hours per week that you're guaranteeing to workers. You can eliminate the contract altogether if it's unforeseeable, but just kind of like a partial reduction right now is problematic. Or maybe you need to add work onto the job order that you didn't realize 4 or 5 months ago when you filed the paperwork that you need the workers to do. Right now, you're unable to do so. So I think just a little more flexibility with kind of actually making the application work once it's filed would be helpful. And then some of the industries that need year-round workers, like the dairy industry, the mushroom industry, some of the meat processing, we'd like to see them be able to use the program or at least be allotted a certain number of visas to try to fulfill those needs where they just don't have a domestic workforce. The second part I'll mention is on the wage and hour compliance side of things. We see a smorgasbord of the way investigators apply the regulation. So we see some assessing violations for things that others don't. Some care about things that others don't. There's always going to be some degree of difference there, but we'd like to see a little more uniformity and consistency there. I'll provide one example. As we had a farmer get a civil money penalty because his worker arrived 3 weeks after the start date, and the investigator said he didn't accurately represent the job because his start date was 3 weeks later. When in actuality, the worker had family issues and had troubles with his visa, and he just got there late, but the farmer needed him 3 weeks ahead of time. And so they got a civil money penalty, and we had to appeal that. Things like that, where it seems to be, a little overburdensome. We'd like to see some of that loosened up a little bit. But yeah, in general, just kind of the consistency on the wage and hour side and the flexibility on the actual application side of things.
Great. Thanks for that. That was really great. Mr. Bremer, you provided an awesome 30,000-foot view analysis on the housing requirements, transportation requirements, and the adverse effect wage rates. I know you said in your individual interview that you're the nuts and bolts guy. You know the program on the ins and outs, especially with your experience at the Department of Labor. However, in your view, are there ways to streamline the program? Mark mentioned a few things, but, from your perspective, with your job at DOL and now AgWorks, are there some streamlining opportunities?
Well, Jessica, there's always streamlining opportunities for every aspect of our life. But let me just say one thing about the H2A program. We've been doing H2A for a long time, and just to be truthful, it has worked quite well for many, many, many farmers. Without the H2A program, they would have no workers. So the program has actually worked well. The program is administered by several different government agencies. The U.S. Department of Labor is the agency that it really starts with, and those are the people who decide whether there's workers for that job or not. And of course, lately there haven't been any workers for the jobs. So if it weren't for H2A, they wouldn't have any workers. So that's one thing that they could do a little bit less on that. It's good that they don't have to advertise in print media anymore. So they've already done a little bit of streamlining there. But basically, the program is exactly the same as it's been since its inception in 1986. It does work good for most people. Some, it doesn't work as good as others. If you decide that you're going to do H2A and you commit yourself to learning everything about it and how it works and how it worked for you, choosing the right people to help you and the right workers, it'll work for you. Once it leaves the U.S. Department of Labor, it goes to the United States Department of Homeland Security, and that's really the agency that Congress gave the program to administer. Now, they use the Department of Labor to test the labor market and also to use their expertise on whether it's agriculture or not. H2A, of course, is limited to agricultural activities. And lately, the U.S. Department of Labor has changed their mind a little bit on what exactly is agriculture and what it isn't. Of course, sometimes they change their mind because of court cases, and sometimes the legal aid people, the worker advocates, and so forth, have some influence over that agency, and they remind them of what agriculture is or what it isn't. The last entry of the government is the United States Department of State, and that's where they vet the worker themselves, see if they're eligible to come to the United States or not. Unfortunately, in the past few months, because of the COVID-19, they've been working from home also, so they haven't been able to do in-person interviews. And sometimes those in-person interviews clears up a lot of things that just can't be done with no interview. So that's been a little problematic lately. But, Jessica, overall, farmers have done a good job complying with the laws. Sometimes they make a little error here and there, just like Mark talked about. And those errors generally can be cleared up. And sometimes the investigators do this, that, and the other that aren't quite correct. So it's always good to have someone that knows what the program really should be doing. But let me put a plug in here for Secretary of Agriculture, Sonny Perdue. Now, Mr. Perdue, Secretary Perdue, has done a yeoman's job on keeping the H2A program going. He was a personal confidant to the President of the United States to not stop the H2A program. And so that's been great, that Secretary Perdue knows the program. He has people in his office that know the program. And also the American Farm Bureau, Zippy Duvall, has been a real friend of the H2A program. And so between the two of them, and they've known each other for a long time, we have good advocates in Washington, D.C. for the program. And sometimes we need them really bad. Mm-hmm. And when the president stopped all visa programs, guest worker programs lately, he did not stop H2A. So we're thankful for that. So basically, yeah, there's things that could be done, but I'm always rude to push some things because it could get worse. If you start putting the H2A program to Congress and let Congress really get a hold of it, both sides, you never know what's going to come out of that. So little by little, we can push things, but for something drastic, I don't think we should. So that's what I've got to say about it.
Perfect. No, that's great. You're absolutely right. You nailed it. We have a great ally with Secretary Perdue and Zippy Duval and Christy Boswell in the Secretary's office. I mean, they are awesome and they've been a huge help to many of our producers trying to navigate H2A during COVID-19. Manuel, you know, you and I talked a lot about concerns that our Kansans have expressed with the fear that their workers are going to abscond and they're going to leave them in the middle of the night and they're going to be without a worker. So can you please share, you know, some of the initiatives you and some others have been working on to create a better relationship between employers and workers, you know, that would benefit everybody within the program?
Jessica, I would love to. Mark and I have talked about it too for this past 2 years that we got to know each other. And the challenges that comes with workers and human beings that have choices and like things and don't like things come for many years, as Dan has pointed out how old the program is already. Personally, I've been involved about 18 years. And every so often, one runs into this challenge where a worker is unhappy and he maybe decides he would like to switch employers and do so. It was interesting that the COVID virus situation brought us a great opportunity because in the past, all agencies involved, and especially, and Mark and I deal predominantly in the South African market, that these guys, we all as agents were working on our own, and there's about 5 bigger agencies that service the market. Excuse me, and then there's about 17 of them in South Africa, small recruiters that recruit people, bring them over, some directly to farmers, some not, and some working through our agencies and helping us and so on. So those who have agents who recruit in South Africa and people like myself and Mark here, we have a bit of a better grip over our clients, our workers, who they are, where they move and so on. But for many years, there were no communication amongst us. So when this COVID virus struck, there was the opportunity to start sitting around the table, try and bring the 4,500 South Africans that had to come over here into the country. And communications were opened. We started trusting each other. And I started thinking about this challenge a year before already, where we do have clients that precisely run into that challenge where they call and say, oh, my guy disappeared. When I got there this morning, his bed was empty and his stuff was packed and he's gone. But it happens very little, but it does happen. So I think the fear is overrated. If I think of my own group of people of 1,300 South Africans, if it maybe happens 5 times or 6 times, that's as much as we would see it. We do have a bit of bigger movement, but not so disappearing in the night kind of problem is not that big. But even though it's there, we thought and came up with an idea of creating a bit of a code of conduct, is what we call it, between us as agents. We drafted one where we talk about cooperation, showing respect, some teamwork, communicating with each other, and commitment to the workers and to the employers. Both parties in this, being a worker, there's always the fear that if I are unhappy and I speak to my employer, he might retaliate towards me. And so there's that part where that does happen. And a little bit of that makes it some workers are very scared to talk to their employer and tell them I'm unhappy. Then if they talk to their agent like us, they're scared we call their employer and tell them they spoke to us. And then that is one of the reasons why they just maybe arrange a job behind the scenes on a Facebook page with connections, social media, and then they could disappear. So what we thought is it's important that if we get all these agents together, that we create a workable way by which we set the standard And I spoke to Mark first, and Mark was the first one from Agri Placements to sign up to the idea. Actually, just last night, the second group approached me and said, we would like to commit to it. We would sign up too. And so we have a long way to go, but we believe that if every agency agrees, we can, one, make sure that the workers know nobody is there to take advantage of you. We as agents are there to help you. We can facilitate the challenges that are there. We'll be involved. We have a procedure by which you can bring your challenges to your employer, then to your agent. And then if you do really need to go, you're nobody's slave. You are really free to go and work for somebody else. But please let us just talk about it, figure out if it's solvable, and if we can find middle ground or a amicable solution. If we can't, then we tell each other. And what we arrange, for instance, as a practical example, Mark had both ways we've had it already, where he called me and I emailed him and said, listen, Johnny is unhappy at Farmer Brown. He wants to leave and he's your guy. He called me. So I let Mark know, listen, please look into it, see if you can solve it, see if you can save the relationship first. If it comes to the point where the farmer says, sorry, I don't need the worker and my relationship and my trust relationship is broken, you may place him somewhere else, then Mark gives me permission and we have maybe an employer that has a legal labor cert, the whole works, and we transfer the worker. And this way, I think it makes the farmers feel that we, one, care, that we have steps that we take, that we can promise them, because the accusation has come out of the marketplaces. Oh, how can these workers just leave with no consequences? And there were no consequences. At some point in time, I would take Mark's workers and place them without talking to Mark, because we didn't talk to each other. You know, there were no communication, and vice versa. But now we do, and we can solve it. And we already saw a reduction in that. We've had a few cases already where the communication led to the farmer saying, no, wait, I'll fix this. I'll change this. I wish you just told me ahead of time or came to me and talked to me, then I would have known. So I think we're developing something wonderful. We're putting a seal that we made onto our web pages. We put the names of the organizations there, so every farmer can then go look and see, do they belong to this group? Do they honor this code? And the code is spelled out clearly. So Jessica, we think we're onto something which we can help improve the system and the whole industry for any H2A worker, not just the South Africans. Yeah.
That sounds great. We really appreciate it, and we appreciate that this is an initiative taking place within the different firms and the different agencies that, you know, work with our farmers and work with the H2A workers, trying to solve a problem, rather than just say, you know, put up our hands, it's not our problem. So
yeah.
This was all, you know, fantastic. Has there been anything that you all have learned from, you know, COVID-19 and the H2A program? I guess, Mark, we'll start with you.
Well, I guess it's just a good reminder of how important the workers are to folks, especially there in Arkansas. You know, when South Africa closed its doors basically on March 16th, we got a barrage of calls and had a lot of employers calling saying, hey, you know, I don't have local workers, so I rely on these guys for my operation. So I guess it was just a good reminder that, yeah, these guys need them. And to kind of tack on what Dan said previously, which would be that, yeah, the H2A program is workable for a lot of folks, and it does work. So just kind of a reminder to stay on top of things and focus on connecting workers, employers together in a beneficial way.
What I would add is it's amazing. We signed up 7 new clients in last month in the middle of all this stuff. So it tells you that farmers still need labor, even with 40 million unemployed people out there. The skill level or the skill sets that people have they use in other industries. This field of labor that we supply, semi-skilled, skilled, is for sure needed and appreciated, and Mark is absolutely correct. You know, when we asked our clients, now that we can't bring them in the spring, do you care to still have them? 98% said it's fine as long as they just here for fall at least. You know, I'll have to make work. I'll have to make a plan. And I asked the farmer this morning who called me, and I said, so how did you get through your spring? And he said, well, I had a few temporary guys that I knew and called upon, and they tried to help me, but it wasn't really great. I wish my South Africans were here, or my H2A workers, but I made it just barely. But now they're coming. They're landing tomorrow or so. So the desperation for the labor that is supplied and provides a specific service is astronomical and is absolutely needed. And I am glad to hear from Dan about Sonny Perdue. I did not know he was so instrumental. We probably should write him a thank you letter or something, but that has really helped tremendously with keeping the H2A program. Somebody remarked and said in this situation, it looks like it was very well protected and kept, and people realizing the essential worker role that these workers have to produce the food on our table. Dan, sorry, I spoke a lot.
Mr. Bremer, the final word.
Okay, here's the final word. The final word is that Americans, because they could not go to restaurants as often as they did, tended to cook at home. And that upped the requirement for produce in the United States. So all at once, more and more fruits and vegetables were needed. And that had an uptick for H2A also. Fortunately, the program worked very well and is working well during COVID-19. One of the big problems with fruits and vegetables right now is that we have a lot of imports coming in. And those imports coming in tend to drive down the price of our fruits and vegetables in the United States. And unfortunately, the USMCA does not address that fact. So right here in the United States, at the peak of our season for fruits and vegetables, we have foreign fruits and vegetables able to come in, and they can sell their products much cheaper because they don't have the array of labor laws and protections and so forth that we do here in the United States. So we need to make sure that this H2A program stays in place and is operable, because without it, we can't exist in fruits and vegetables. So I just want to make that note that if you have any influence over your congressmen and senators, please ask them to do something about the cheap imports that are coming in. And buy American, grown in the USA. Make sure your constituents see that label on the products that they buy.
Great. No, absolutely. Absolutely. We hear a lot from our produce folks about that very same issue. So thanks again, gentlemen. This was fantastic.
Thank you, Jessica.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you.